very much. May we have our seats? Once again, good morning. I think now we get to know each other, who is in the room. Do you have an extra mic? Extra mic. I think we can start that corner. Please tell us your name and institution you are affiliated with.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charles Otieno, our National Society. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
My name is Charles
Oswald Model,
our National
with the KBC.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
My name is Charles
Oswald Model, with the KCC.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
My name is Charles
Oswald Model, with the KCC.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, sir. Charles Oswald Model, with the KCC.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, sir. Charles Oswald Model.
When we are told good morning, please respond. If the morning is not good, just say it is not good. When we are told good morning, please respond. If the morning is not good, just say it is not good. When we are told good morning, please respond. If the morning is not good, just say it is not good. When we are told good morning.
Happy to be here, happy to engage.
Morning, I'm Leda Busiburi, affiliated with South Africa.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Migori. The lead producer KTN News, and also a member of the Oxford Journalism Network. Yeah, glad to be here.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Kwa majina naitwa Winnie Kamau, member of the Association of Freelance Journalists and editor at Stock Africa, and also a member at KEC.
Good morning. My name is Millicent Awor. I'm an editor at the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, and I'm also a council member, Kenya Editors Guild, council member for TV. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Ellen Wanjiru. I'm an editor at Mediapolis for K24 TV. Good morning, everyone. My name is Wageshi from Capital FM.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Helen Shikanda. I'm a health and science reporter from the Nation Media Group.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Samuel Do Ouma. I am a health and science journalist. I work for Health Business Magazine as a journalist and also editor.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Winfrey Owino. I am a reporter
scientist in climate change in the region of Eastern and Southern Africa, an expert trainer in climate change. I am based at the International Livestock Research Institute. Will be part of the team to take you through this process of training. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. So my name is Kenneth Luma. I work at the German Development Corporation. We support this program. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is James Gonzalo. I write with the Standard newspaper in news, business, and climate change.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Susan Dunda, science reporter on the Media Services.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Claire Wanja. I work for Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, Digital Department.
Hamjambo. Hamjambo tena. Kwa majina naitwa Irene Komboka kutoka Mtaani Radio.
Habari zenu? Hamjambo. Mimi naitwa Krista Nagusova. Council member wa Kenya Editors Guild. I am the radio representative on the council. I am also affiliated to Kilimo Media. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's still one more table. I think we'll just introduce them.
Good morning. My name is Rosario Mungo, CEO of Kenya Editors Guild. Karibuni.
Hamjambo. Natamani nizungumze kwa Kiswahili. Alafu nipige makofi kwa sababu it is an achievement. I'm Levi Obonya, I teach at Daystar. Thank you. Somebody should translate.
Good morning. Kwa majina anaitwa Levi Obonyo. Nafanya kazi na Daystar University. Sasa mnipigie makofi. Yeah, good morning everyone. My name is Ruth Moranya Masege. I work with the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry as an NDC. NDC stands for Nationally Determined Contributions, and NCAP stands for the National Climate Change Action Plan Coordinator. I'm based there from the NDC Partnership, which is a global partnership of developed and developing countries around the topics of NDCs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think now we know each other. If I ask you your neighbor, please don't tell me that you don't know his or her name, because he or she has. Let me start here. I'm happy to be here. I know some, like personally, I'm not very good in remembering names. So what I normally do, when you mention your name, I try to remember the first name. Then I keep on telling, oh, that is the first name of that person. So I'll not forget. Once again, Francis Muridi is my name. I'm happy to be here. In the house, as you have heard, we have, and I'm happy to know that we have officials from Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry. We have GSZ, we have journalists, we have editors, we have scientists. I think it is a very, very, very rich house, isn't it? I'm sure all of us know the reason why we're here, and when we reflect, I'm sure each and every one of us is in one way or another affected directly or indirectly by climate change. We have seen very, very well, we have seen economic impact when it comes to issues touching on climate change. We have seen how the drought has affecting agriculture. Even if you are not a farmer, I'm sure you know somebody who is a farmer. And you have seen how sometimes people are planting, hoping that rains will come the way they used to come, probably end of February, March. April used to be very heavy rain across the country, but you can see how erratic the weather is, and all is because of climate change. You have seen how livestock have died, and even wildlife, and even destroying our tourism. All that is the effects of climate change and how it is impacting on us as far as our economy is concerned. But also we have seen the social impacts of climate change, and some of these things are really devastating when you watch news, when you see how people are suffering and communities, how people are being displaced. I'm sure all of us had an opportunity to at least read one story or watch one TV clip of the displacements Lake Naivasha, Lake Nakuru, and also Lake Baringo. And you saw even some stories whereby, because people were displaced from their homes, they ended up living in very congested places. Schools were swallowed. So people were not even going to schools, those who were supposed to go to schools. And I was reading a story whereby actually it was contributing to teen pregnancies, because that was part of Baringo. Because now people, these young girls were staying in places which ordinarily are not their homes. They are just crowded. Now you can see the social impact of climate change. And of course we have seen issues touching on biodiversity, many species being at risk. And also, I'm sure all of us have been reading about the coral reefs. We sit and ask ourselves, what is our role as journalists? What is our role as communicators as far as climate change is concerned? I think I will want to hear just one or two comments. What do you think is the role of, what is your role as a journalist? Any volunteer as far as climate change is concerned? Any volunteer? Yes, Tom.
I think just to build on what you were talking about, the communities who are affected by climate change, most of them are not really aware of the kind of climate solutions that are being discussed at these climate conferences and climate meetings. So our role, speaking for myself as coming from the media, is sort of propagate the kind of climate smart solutions that are coming out of these meetings, so that they can be aware and take advantage, so that they can adapt to their situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Passing the knowledge from these conferences back to the ground and making it simple so that it can have meaning. Anyone else? Any other volunteer? Any journalist? What do you think is your role? I had so many journalists from Standard, from Nation, from Radio Africa, from KBC, and Talk Africa. There are many. What do you think is our role? If we don't know our role, I'll call Prof. He is the one who teach and come and teach us what is our role. What is our role as journalists? Topis, you want to try? And it should not be complex. Just what do you think is our role as journalists?
First and foremost is to equip myself with information, have an understanding of the subject, so that I am able to communicate the message to the audience from a point of information.
Thank you very much, Topista, and I'm sure all of us are following. From where I sit, I think it is our role to promote public understanding of scientific happenings and uncertainties. It is also our role to frame climate debate. And I've always thought, actually, a role that media has not been playing very well is the role of amplifying the voices of those who are doing impactful things to address climate change. Just a thought. But when it comes to climate change, and this is where the challenge is in our newsrooms, is that we are in an era whereby specialization as far as journalism is declining. Special desk are declining. Of course, you know what has been happening in all media houses. And most journalists today are more or less general reporters. So the journalists will today cover crime, tomorrow cover an accident, the next day go to climate change conference, the next day go to cover floods. So we are increasingly eroding specialization. And that is where the role of training comes in. And that is where there is need to train journalists and editors, even if you are doing other roles in your newsroom, wherever you work, or in your service to the nation. At least you have very rich background and very rich knowledge as far as climate change is concerned, so that you can communicate, because if you don't understand, it will not be easy for you to communicate. And I guess that is why we're here. And at this juncture, I would like to invite the Kenya Editors Guild CEO, Rosalia, to officially welcome the guests and make some remarks. Karibu, Rosalia.
Good morning.
No, I really can't hear you. I'd like us to be maybe a bit more lively. I want to hear you say aloud, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, good to see all of you in this meeting. And we are grateful that you responded to the invite to come to the launch, and also to the training that happens immediately after the launch. So I'd like to just first of all acknowledge all the reporters that are here from the various media houses represented, all the science reporters from the various media houses present. But in our midst, we also have members of the guild. So I'd just like them to stand one more time so that we see them. Members of Kenya Editors Guild, please. Okay, some are still coming. Thank you very much. We can clap for them. And then we also have, the Guild is a membership association, which is led by elected leaders, right? It's led by elected leaders who mainly work in the newsroom. So we have the elected leaders of the Guild who call themselves the Executive Council. That's the Executive Council of the Guild. I also like them to stand up and say hi to you. All right, we have Linda Batch. Let me just recap. For those who are incoming, Linda Batch is in charge of print. She's a representative of the Executive Council in charge of print. Then we have Millicent Obor. She represents TV in the council. Okay, then we have Topista Nabusoba. She represents radio in the council. Then we have Francis O'Reilly, who represents digital media, and who is also the chair of the Innovation Committee. So the Innovation Committee is the wing of the Guild where this meeting is domiciled. Thank you. You may have your seats. All right. So, Engineer Festus Ngeno, who is the Principal Secretary, he'll be coming shortly for the State Department of Environment and Climate Change. And Professor Levi Obonyo, Dean of Daystar University. The representatives of the GIZ and the embassy. Government representatives present. Members of the Executive Council. Distinguished members of Kenya Editors Guild. Editors, reporters, members of the media fraternity, morning. Good morning. And on behalf of the president of the guild who could not make it, Karibuni Sana, to this initiative of Kenya Editors Guild. It is my pleasure now to welcome you all to this important launch of climate change reporting, training, and curriculum development. There are many sectors of specialization in journalism, and there is investigative reporting, there is feature writing, there is crime reporting, there is court reporting, parliamentary reporting, and then general reporting, which are all very, very critical. Climate change reporting is an area of specialization that is increasingly becoming important, and one that newsrooms should pay more attention to and allocate more resources towards. And we have seen a shift where newsrooms are deliberately creating desks and allocating more resources to those desks. Reporting on climate change is an important area that calls for precision and for continued training for journalists, so that they can understand the basic science, that have the competence to communicate the research. Understanding of the basic science helps educate readers, viewers, and listeners to promote their own understanding. Most newsrooms in Kenya have in the past built teams around experienced political and business reporters and court reporters. Few have also built teams around science reporting as well as climate change reporting desks, and are beginning to pay more attention to these beats. Therefore, capacity building in the area of climate change reporting is needed, as much as it is in other areas of specialized reporting. That's why we at Kenya Editors Guild value the partnership with the GIZ and the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change, and Forestry. Kenya Editors Guild exists to promote professionalism and excellence in journalism. As gatekeepers, we are interested in factual reporting on matters of public interest. KED is focused on enhancing professional standards in media, developing capacity, and providing opportunities for reporters to excel in their reportage, to serve their readers, listeners, and viewers from a perspective of knowledge. Kenya Editors Guild also recently entered into a partnership with Daystar University, and we hope to leverage on this partnership to test the curriculum that will be developed from this initiative at the institution. Excellent reportage must go beyond reporting about who said what, when, and move to the basic tenets of science that has been proven. Reporters must learn to interrogate journal articles, reports, and government documents which will add value to their story through provision of data policy. They must look beyond single sourcing to help viewers understand the story. Now, that is the duty of reporters. Editors, who are the gatekeepers, have an even greater duty to ensure that what the reporter intended to say makes sense and is factual in order to send the correct message out to the audiences. How do we then bring salience to climate reporting in Kenya and Africa? How do we notice the important changes happening in our environment and render importance to these issues in a manner that promotes quality reporting, understanding by the audiences, and catches that attention of policymakers? As journalists, it is our role to clearly communicate science. This must be based on accuracy and truth. In another life, I spent time climate change subject. I crisscrossed the country in search of stories. I like to tell the story of communities, their challenges, and also their triumphs. One of the challenges I witnessed in reporting then was confusion of terms. Global warming versus climate change. On TV, there was constant mix-up of wrong, old footage to tell the current story of climate change. The most common was the use of acres of Cape land repeatedly. If we do not report correctly, we are doing injustice to society, thereby losing the trust of our readers and audiences. We have major threats: climate change, biodiversity loss, food security, food systems, deep sea mining, forest cover laws, wildlife trafficking. The issues are many. And we hope that through this training that we'll be launching, we'll be able to tackle as many of them and allow journalists to deep dive into a few issues, thereby promoting specialization. But we also have mechanisms of ongoing efforts to bring change. More visibility means that issues are likely to get attention for policy action. But in this day and age of fake news, verification of information acts as a second layer of defense against incorrect information, but also to help our audiences to better understand how they of defense against incorrect information, but also to help our audiences to better understand how they of defense against incorrect information, but also to help our audiences to better understand how they of defense against incorrect information, but also to help our audiences to better understand how they of defense and forums such as this will help to promote understanding also of climate change negotiations, what issues should concern editors whenever they dispatch team to events that we report on. We know that there was a COP in 2023, COP28. We know that COP29 is coming in November. Even as we go through this training, it is my hope that whenever we dispatch such teams to the events, we look forward to critiquing what's going on from an informed perspective. We hope that this kind of training will help to foster understanding for reporting for the COPs. I look forward to listening to critique from other friends, government agencies, and I'm glad that we have the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry with us, scientists, we have scientists in the room, climate experts, and those in the field of sustainable development. We look forward to them telling us what needs to be done. Because when a different eye looks at what you're doing, they are able to point the gaps, which is exactly what the training in the afternoon will entail. We'll be pointing gaps at what entails our reporting on climate change issues. What are we missing out? What are we covering well? That will foster better understanding. With those few remarks, I would like to say thank you very much and karibuni to this forum.
Thank you, Rosalia. Let's clap for her again. when I was listening to her speech or her remarks, I was thinking about a few things, and one thing she mentioned was about the need for us in media to have reports that go beyond single sourcing. And I think that is a very important thing, whereby the era of he said, she said, and with this digital transformation, if your focus is he said, she said, then I think you are doing injustice to yourself and the organization you work for, and you'll end up even losing audiences. And also she mentioned the issues of data, the need to have data, a lot of data in our reports, because everything we write, we must back it with data. And there are very many sources of data, including when it comes to climate change. And also she mentioned something to do with communicating in a way where science is understood by our audiences. We are well aware that science is complex, but it is our role to ensure that, irrespective of how it looks to be or how it is complex, it is understood by our ordinary audiences. And also she has talked about captivating, doing content that is captivating and interesting to our audiences. And lastly, she has also mentioned the need for continuous training. When it comes to continuous training, no other people can do good training than our institutions of higher learning. And I would like to invite Professor Levi Obonyo, the Dean of Daystar University. Karibu sana.
Asante, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody, once again.
Good morning.
It's indeed a pleasure to be here and to share this moment with colleagues in the industry and from elsewhere. And thank you so much, Ministry of Environment and Climate, and that is concerned about the climate change. And we acknowledge all the guests who are here, and really thank you for the opportunity. We're delighted to be here to tell the climate story, and particularly at this time that is very uncertain for journalists and for journalism, not just in the country but across the board. Journalism training in Kenya is very robust. We have 70-something universities, all of them that have formal training that focuses on journalism in one way or the other. That's besides the tertiary institutions that offer training in, again, different areas of journalism. And then ad hoc training opportunities organized by various agencies that often provide opportunity to sharpen the skills of journalists across the country. Media Council, for example, has done quite a bit of work in this area, and the Kenya Editors Guild also engages quite a bit in providing opportunity for journalists to be able to sharpen their skills. Journalism training should have three components. The first area is for the skill or the craft of journalism itself. The second part is focus on the knowledge of the field of journalism. And then the third component, in my view, is content field. What stories do journalists tell? What area of concentration does that come from? The skills of the craft part is obvious. This is where journalism trainings are exposed to coursework on news reporting, news writing, features writing, writing opinions, editorials, magazines, second part features training in knowledge field of the area. So, for example, what are the ethical issues that a journalist not be paying attention to? What are the legal issues that we need to be focusing on? And so to speak, how street smart can you be in order to cover the bits that you may be assigned appropriately? The third area is content. This would vary from journalist to journalist. I think in the first two areas, we pretty much say every journalist needs to have some skills in those spaces. So, for example, any cab reporter obviously must have the skills in the first area. But then as you rise into the space, then the necessity to be able to be skilled editor comes in. But that part which is the more specified area is a question of what stories do we tell as journalists? What exactly are you an expert in? The field from which you draw from, that when you begin to tell the stories in that particular space, you will be so engaged with every aspect of it that it becomes easy to tell the story of that area very well. This would form, for example, such fields as politics, business, parliament, climate, courts, religion, and could go on. And again, Rosalia exposed, discussed quite a bit of that area. Even in sports, we have specific content areas, for example, football, motorsport, swimming, athletics. Again, not every sports journalist can cover everything in sports, but the necessity to acquire skill sets in some specific area that will make you an expert in that. Today in Kenya, some of these content areas have no specialized reporters, despite the importance of those fields. And I often tell people, take for example, we all go to church, we all go to mosques, we all go to places of worship. But do we really have reporters in Kenya today that have clear command of this place of religion in society and how that affects the kind of things that we do? If you take religion, for example, into detail, it's quite a flashpoint in our society. It would be impossible, for example, to report the Middle East without an appropriate appreciation of the oldest religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And their points of convergence and their points of departure. In the Arab world today, the divide between Shia and Sunni Muslims sometimes is at the heart of the story. Not all Christian priests are fathers. Indeed, some Christian churches don't even have priests. Instead, they have pastors and different names. If we do not appreciate that detail, it would be very difficult to cover that field with sufficient expertise. Now, I'm just using the field of religion as an example. If we do not understand, for example, the difference between Nakorino and the PAG, and why when Nakorino does the things they do, what is it that is at the heart of what they're doing, it would be impossible to report that area with specificity and with the details that it requires. Most of the training offered in this country actually focuses just in the skills area, news reporting, news writing. Then later on, develops into the later details of editing and other aspects, but there are. The kind of trainings that we tend to have are too often focused on training editors or right journalists on the same things that we tend to have focused attention on previously. And too often drawn from, I think the new word in this space is veteran journalists, where veteran journalists come to train the younger journalists, for example, election reporting, among other things. There are at least three parts to the newsroom. One is through formal training. I mean, you go through the specific institutions, and then of late go through the media council to get the internship in the media houses, and then be able to make your way into the newsroom. The second is the natural storyteller, who, because of their skills in storytelling, essentially emerge and become newsroom personalities. I don't exactly know what media personality is, but often they become personalities in that space. The third part is much more murky. Maybe somebody who has been a good DJ or a socialite performer, eventually emerges to join the newsroom and finally find themselves telling the stories. And so the trainings tend to focus on a lot of these areas. Not all good storytellers have to be trained. There's some good storytellers that are good to go in terms of their storytelling. And UNESCO has recognized this, and particularly looking at it from the point of view of the right to freedom of speech, right to expression, say the requirement that journalists be accredited violates that space. And so they argue that anybody who has a microphone should have the right to say what they need to say. But I think some of the adult trainings are usually targeted at helping people to be able to hone their skills and learn a bit of the terrain that involves in reporting in this area. The area that IVA is most lacking is content. What's the story that a journalist is going to tell? It is the energy. If it is the energy story, to what extent does the journalist understand that field so exhaustively that they can actually tell that story effectively? It's not just a question of seeing lights. How many, when you're buying your bulb, what does that really mean with regard to the consumption of energy in the specific area? How many journalists understand that? Finance, agriculture, or say, for example, infrastructure. The centrality of climate today cannot be overstated. Why things are happening the way that they're doing. Too often we reflect back that those who have tended to emerge as climate champions and climate reporters in the country are, and other things as well, is driven by the fact that they develop a liking for that space, or they see a gap and they develop a liking for that space. But how can their capacity, the command of just liking as opposed to early exposure and continued exposure to latest developments in that field is really critical. And climate is one of those spaces. It's playing havoc with farmers and it's at the heart of the survival of communities. This is what makes this initiative that we're talking about really important. But in my view, I'm not so much looking at it as focusing attention on the first two areas of journalistic training, but essentially on the third, which is the content. What is the story that we're going to tell? And again, if I draw from what Rosalia has just been talking about, the various aspects of climate that we can be able to report and write about in our areas. If possible, skills for telling the climate story is so important. As journalism curriculum designers and trainers, we look forward to the challenge of ensuring that more journalists have the knowledge of this area, so that when we get together, when they get to tell the story, that they'll actually be telling this story with the necessary expertise that is required in that space. And I think what that does require to a great extent is how can we be able to not just introduce journalists to the experts in the field that will continuously develop, improve, input more into their understanding of what's happening, how the field is evolving. But to be able to create a channel through which such climate stories and related content can continuously be covered. It's one thing, for example, to be passionate about climate, but then you go to the newsroom to an editor who is completely untouched by what you're talking about. Let me tell a story here which speaks to sometimes the necessity to understand the story out there, but then probably having an editor that is not connected. We all know about Roger Whittaker. Who was he? Was he just a musician? I also sing. A musician born in Kenya, lived in, and really rose to be a great musician. Where was he living when he lived in Kenya? Does anyone remember? Waithaka? Anyway, the story goes that one time, I think it must have been the story of Roger Whittaker or somebody like that, a serious musician that had Kenyan roots that passed on, if I'm not wrong. And then a music journalist came to the newsroom very shocked that such a serious musician has passed on and wanted to write the story. but the editor never liked music, never enjoyed music, so had no idea what music was all about. So when the news reporter comes in and says, we have got a breaking story, this top musician has passed on, and the editor asks, what do you mean top musician? They say, he sang the stories about Kenya, and etc. So is he like Kimanu or something? And it now became the task of the editor, of the reporter, to start helping the editor understand the magnitude, the importance of the journalist, of the musician that had passed on. And because of the chain of news processing, if the editor does not appreciate the magnitude of a story, it will be very difficult for the reporter to be able to carry the story through to its appearing on the screen, on the print pages. And so the ability to develop this entire chain so that you do not come to the editor with all your training in the field of climate change, and the editor begins to wonder, what do you mean by this climate change? You mean this climate is changing? But the necessity then to be able to appreciate across the chain of the reporting. And so what one will be looking forward to from the engagement that we're having today is that it's not just the question of providing the climate of appreciation of the changes that are taking place in our environment, but we're providing a chain and a realization, a sensitization within the newsroom that these are important stories because of their impact on society generally. So that when a story is breaking of this nature, that the journalists, that the editors will be sufficiently engaged to assign the appropriate reporter, but to provide enough space that that story may be carried out, maybe featured in the subsequent editions, the bulletins, etc., etc. And so the task here, the way I see it, is that we must not just start by creating a cadre of individuals who appreciate the environment, who appreciate climate, who appreciate what's going on in the space, but to seek to create a change also in the newsroom, desks that will constantly be looking out and creating halls for climate-related stories so that this becomes a constant story that we're going to be engaged in. But we don't want to see the editors, the reporters that are going to be engaged in this space, not just focus their attention on the local market. Too often, reporters, and I spend most of my time in the training, and they look up to a couple of stars that show up on the television screens or on the pages of the newspapers, and they say, that's my role model. But we're looking at a situation where your focus is telling the story, and we should then be able to tell this story wherever stories can be told. And in the kind of worlds that we're now occupying, there are a range of platforms that are becoming available for us to tell the stories. It's not just KBC, it's not just NTV, Citizen, etc. It's not just NTV, the Daily Nation and the Star and all the newspapers that we have. But the platforms of telling stories are now increasingly on our hands. And so to what extent would individuals whose skill sets have been developed and whose understanding and knowledge of the climate theme have been enhanced will then deploy in telling the stories beyond the traditional platforms, but also look at the international market where stories can be featured. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Let's clap again for Prof. And I think Prof has mentioned something that is very important for all of us, especially us in the media. What is your expertise as a journalist? What do people know you for? Is it court reporting? Is it parliament? Is it sports? And even in sports, what area of sports? Is it climate change? And that is the essence of specialization. And also he has talked about the need for in-depth reporting. When I read your article, can I understand what are the issues? Where are you coming from? Where are you right now? And where do you want to take me as a reader or your audience? The in-depth writing. And also he has talked about skills for telling climate stories. And one of the skills that I would really want to see, I wish even myself I had it 100%, is how to simplify climate change stories so that they are so much interesting that they can compete with any other news item. And if you can teach me that, I'll pay for that course. I'll be very happy to be a student for that. But I'm sure that is why we are here. I would like to special recognition presence of our PS for State Department for Environment and Climate Change. That is Engineer Festus Ngeno, and also recognize the presence of Dr. Pacifica Ogola, is the Director Climate Change, Directorate Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. They'll be speaking to us, but before that, I would like to invite Charles Mwangi. Charles Mwangi is the Head of Programs and Research at Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. Bwana Mwangi. Karibu sana. And let's clap for Mwangi as he comes.
So our PS, Environment, Dr. Ngeno, our Director at the Ministry, Dr. Pacifica Ogola, all other protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning once again. Good morning. Thank you so much. My name is Charles Mwangi. I work for Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance as Head of Programs and Research, and I'm standing in for my Executive Director, Midika, who was supposed to be this meeting, but then he traveled out of the country for some issues that we have to address. So I'm representing him this morning. And maybe just to mention that the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance is a civil society organization that works in Africa, in 51 countries in Africa, and our really is to agitate or to claim justice for the African people, especially when it comes to matters climate change. And I must say that we are very much excited that we have been invited for this important, conversation or this important meeting, because we believe that we have several constituencies that are important in the fight against climate justice and for the African people. The first constituency, of course, is the Africa Group of Negotiators. And that is a team, that is the battalion that we said, to go and negotiate on our behalf. When it comes to these international, conferences, where we go there as African people and to call for justice for the African people. But I think the other very important constituency is this constituency seated here, the media. Because I think one of our biggest problem in the continent is that we still have not learned how to tell our story. Or we have not told our story, good enough, in a way that the world is going to listen to us. Because as we talk about climate change, the first victims that come to the mind of everyone is actually the African people. If you look at the list of the least developed countries, and those that are even more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, it is actually the countries in Africa, in this particular continent. And it is now common knowledge that the continent is only contributing a meager, I think 4%, of the total greenhouse gases emissions. But all the impacts are actually here in the continent, first and foremost. I had a conversation with the former president of Malawi just about 2 weeks ago in Malawi when we went there for a loss and damage conference. And listening to that lady, that particular morning, narrating to us how her own husband actually lost the roof of his house, just I think 2 days before we started the conference. She also narrated about a story where a family was actually crushed by a rock, during a cyclone, Freddy. And that family was not even an earth from where they are. So they actually just at a huge rock because nobody really bothered to actually even pick them from where they are. Now these are the stories of loss and damage. Now until we learn how to put human faces on our stories, the rest of the world might not take us seriously. And that is why it's very, very important to have this conversation to continue sharpening our journalists, and of course they do great work, but I think we have to continue, sharpening our skills, and actually telling our story in a way that it actually resonates with other people in other parts of the world. I remember there was one person who was being interviewed somewhere, and out of ignorance, he was actually from the West. He could not understand how somebody could sleep hungry. And I'm told the response was, why would somebody sleep hungry? Why can't they eat pizza? Out of ignorance, some people still don't understand how somebody can actually sleep hungry. But I think it's our role as journalists to actually communicate our story, put human faces on our story, and support the war against climate change, the war that our people, our governments, and our negotiators are actually pushing through. Remember they say, until that time when an antler runs to tell his story, the story will always glorify the hunter. So we must tell our own narratives, and those narratives must actually be African-driven narratives, and they must be seen, from how, we look at things. So ladies and gentlemen, we're living in times that are very, very uncertain. Science is telling us that we must cut down our emissions, specifically to tell you, by about 43%, if we are to maintain the 1.5 degree, target, by 2030. But she'll also tell you that if all the national determined contribution blueprints that countries have submitted, we are headed on somewhere about 2.7 degree trajectory. But again, we're also saying that Africa already contributes about 4% of total greenhouse gas emissions. So if you have to cut ours by about 4%, what about the next, or the other 9%? Of course, we know where that emission cut has actually come from. And I think it's important, therefore, as African people to actually stand and also call for accountability, particularly from the countries that are contributing a lot. I know we have always been told that we have to be inward-looking, and we must also look at what we need to do, internally, so that we can be able to avert, some of these particular challenges that we're experiencing, the impact of climate change. But Dr. Ngeno will tell you from the ministry, we're already working too much as a country, or as African people. We're already committing so much of our budgets to actually support our people to adapt. When we do cash transfers in Marsabit, when we have challenges, with drought in that particular area, like we had, I think last year, we had the worst drought in 40 years in the Horn of Africa. And our government spent so much in terms of trying to save our people, by even giving food relief. By doing all this, you're actually supporting communities because of the impact of climate change, that they're not responsible. So we're already spending so much in our budgets to support our people to adapt. And therefore, when people tell us to be inward-looking, which is a good thing, but we must also push those who are accountable to be able to address those particular challenges that we are experiencing. But again, it's also important how we tell our story. I know we have been talking about mitigation and adaptation. And the narrative out there is that mitigation needs to be put in the forefront. Why? Because it brings, of course, with it, a lot of private sector investments, and therefore our partners from the north would find probably mitigation is very, very attractive. And that's why Climate Finance Flow has actually been in favor of mitigation. In fact, 75% of all climate finance coming through is for mitigation. And it's okay, we need to mitigate. It's important. But we must understand that for Africa, adaptation is the biggest priority. And adaptation leaves us with no choice but to adapt. Because the impacts are already here with us. And like I said, we're already spending so much from our budgets to actually solve out that particular problem that we're experiencing. So how do we tell our story? When others are pushing mitigation, how do we coin our story in a way that people understand why adaptation is the biggest priority for the African continent, for example? We now have this issue of loss and damage, which has been an agenda that we have been pushing so hard. And our African negotiators and our governments really put spirited effort to ensure that that agenda was passed so that we have a facility that can actually be able to address the issues of loss and damage being experienced. Just a few days ago, I read from the papers that we have lost at least 10 people who have been accounted for through the floods that happened just the other day. One of them was a police officer. It takes a lot to train a police officer in the country. And others, of course, are mothers. Others are fathers. And so when you see those figures, they're not just figures, but they represent fathers, mothers, sisters to someone, and government officials, who we have invested in. And you see, when those issues happen, for example, and our people have been able to push, our governments have been able to push. We have at least a facility that was operationalized, of course, last year in Dubai. The question is, when you see 700 million US dollars that have been put in that particular kitty, you ask yourself, the former president of Malawi was telling me that Malawi alone needs about 900 million US dollars to deal with the Cyclone Freddy first, the impacts of Cyclone Freddy, because 250 houses were destroyed. Malawi government has not even been able to construct not even 10% of those houses back. Now, if Malawi alone needs about 900 million US dollars, and now we are celebrating 700 million that has been put in a global kitty, what are we saying? You know, how do we express, you know, the actual needs of our people? Adaptation alone, globally we need more than 340 billion US dollars per year by 2030, if we have to bridge that particular gap. For us at Endowment, I'm sure it's much, much bigger. Pacifica can probably give us the figures. So how do we continue showing that for sure the resources that are coming through, vis-a-vis, you know, the gap that exists, does not make a lot of sense? How do we bring up that particular story? And that story can only come in if we're able to put, like I said, human face, you know, on the figures of people that actually died, on communities that are losing their houses, you know, and so on and so forth. And that work is actually put on the shoulders of our journalists. So as Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, we appreciate this invitation. We appreciate GIZ for this invitation, and we are willing and happy to work with you. Of course, we appreciate the role that the journalists actually play, and that is why we normally have an award scheme that we call the ESA Awards, Africa Climate Change and Environmental Reporting Awards, which happens, you know, biannually. The last one we did 2 years ago, so we have another one coming this year, which we are hoping to launch at the sidelines of the Climate Change and Environment for Africa Conference. So that may happen later in September or August, depending on how the dates are fixed. And we are looking forward to working with you. We have honored journalists in the past. We'll continue honoring them, but across Africa, and it is in all forms, from digital reporting, you know, to TV, to radio, you know, to even social media, because social media is another avenue that is becoming also very, very attractive in terms of, you know, communicating and disseminating information. So we're looking forward to partnering with you, GIZ and other partners, and of course we've always partnered with the Kenyan government, you know, in those particular processes, so that we can honor our journalists and so that we can continue sharpening the skills of our great journalists in this country and of course in Africa, so that we can tell our story and our own narrative and from our own point of view. So thank you so much for inviting us for this important conversation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Mwangi from PSJA. Let's clap for him again. Thank you, and we have heard him telling us about the need for us to tell our own stories, the need to push about adaptation as Africa's priority, and also the need to put a human face in all these things that are happening touching on climate change. It is my pleasure to invite Dr. Pacifica Ogola, the Director, Climate Change Directorate, Ministry of Environment, and Dr. give us your remarks, then kindly invite the PS on our behalf. Thank you very much. Karibu. Let's clap for her.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll start on existing protocol and say good morning, but I'm not going to give remarks because according to government protocol, I'm not supposed to give remarks when my boss is here. He's representing the ministry in this meeting. But I want to take this opportunity to thank GIZ for supporting this process, and also to thank the journalists for the work that you're doing, and we really want to work with you to make sure that the message is delivered. And just to emphasize that it's not just about reporting science. There's a lot of climate politics, and I think that is very interesting, especially when it comes to the story of fossil fuels, whether we should continue fossil fuel or phase it out. There's also the advocacy component. So there are different angles to it, and there are interlinkages between different thematic areas. And I think the challenge that we all have is the story of simplification. I think that is a challenge that I also struggle with when I'm going to a meeting or with stakeholders, how to simplify or to translate some of the words to Swahili. But this morning, we are privileged to have with us the keynote speaker, who was formerly the CECM for Nakuru County. He has had a lot of experience in this field. He has worked with the counties, and he's one of the champions and the ones who really helped develop and establish what we call Financing Locally Climate Action, FLOCA. I don't know if you heard about it. This is a program that is sitting at the National Treasury, but it's implemented by other ministries like Environment, Agriculture, and the county governments through COG and other relevant ministries. And the person that I'm inviting this morning was the one coordinating this in the county, so he understands the needs of the local communities and the importance of making sure that the money goes down to the community and that the action that the government is taking is as a result of what the villages and the wards have submitted to counties as their proposals for action. The person again has been responsible for the Africa Climate Summit that we had last year, which was very intense, and I think he had sleepless nights. Having that responsibility on your head as the PS responsible for climate change is not an easy task. The world is looking at you, there's COP, there's everything happening around you, there are all these other conventions, there's a just concluded UNEA, and I think that this is one ministry or state department that should really be given the limelight that it deserves, because it's the ministry that is connecting us with environment and with the lives and livelihoods of our communities. And this person is none other than my PS, Engineer Festus Ngeno. PS, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pacifica. Let's give a round of applause. Allow me to recognize the presence of quite a number of you on the protocols already established. The president of the Kenya Leaders Guild, Professor Levi Oponyo from the Dean School of Communication. Of course, Aksha, Rithika is not here, but my friend Mark is around. And all of us, good morning. Engineer Festus Ngeno is my name, as mentioned. And Principal Secretary, State Department of Environment and Climate Change. I'm privileged to be here this morning. We are honored that we've been invited as the State Department responsible for these climate change manenos. I usually ask Dr. Pacifica. Yeah, they are called climate change. I usually refer to them as climate change manenos, and then they are climate change people. So the guys who are working in my Directorate of Environment and Climate Change are climate people, and there are so many, so they can be broken down those stories. And of course, Pakia has been very, very supportive in terms of the movement, the civil society voice. I think you forgot to mention that you protested, or we protested as Kenya also, that we lost the opportunity to host the loss and damage secretariat, and I think it is how we work together as a team. But in terms of reporting and those climate issues, I think the teams are here. We are privileged that GIZ has put this together. We just had this conversation. I think we were doing Africa Climate Summit at Serena, and I didn't know it was going to be happening like this, but I want to appreciate GIZ for standing with the Kenya Leaders Guild team, and I think reporting is also important. So receive greetings from my Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Soifan Chuyo, who was supposed to be here, but engaged on something else, and therefore she sent me to represent the team. But I have a very, very strong team that works with me at the Department of Climate Change Directorate led by Dr. Pacifica, and I will also other technical officers who I usually send them. If you come to my office to discuss this climate change manenos and they are not there, I might tell you something else. So I usually make sure that I work around with them to be able to deliver on the message. Allow me to read a few remarks that have been put here. That, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to all this important training on climate change reporting. Let me state that this training is very timely, as we all need to act with a great urgency to address critical issue that affects us all, and that is climate change. I am especially happy to know that the conversations we started last year during the Africa Climate Summit, as responded by Dr. Pacifica, on the role of well-informed climate change reporting are big follow-through. And during the media event hosted by the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry in partnership with the GIZ and the Kenya Editors Guild, the need for more training and capacity building for reporters, editors, journalists, and other media actors was strongly highlighted. This inaugural training, therefore, it signifies our joint commitment to continuous learning and delivery of factual information. And I want to just give a thumbs up to the editors and journalists. I think we have almost understood what we are reporting on. I think we are there. I remember this local story that Pacifica was talking about in 2018, when we invited media guys to Nakuru with quite a number of governors. And we were trying to discuss what is this climate change, and everyone thought that it was about planting trees. And I think 5 years down the line, I think we understand how to report and what the things that we are looking at as we look at the effects of climate change. And I think we are going into the Met Department has issued an advisory evidence. A few weeks ago, as mentioned here, we have lost a few people in that regard. Lives which is not supposed to because of heavy floods that come in with no planned infrastructure, and then it becomes a problem. But we usually look at it from the climate change perspective, that those are effects of climate change when we have high temperature or above normal. My guys at the Met Department say it's not very rainfall. They call it above normal. So I usually ask them, so what is the normal before it becomes above? So it is important that we understand that we are facing adverse climate issues, and therefore the editors, the journalists, and the guys who do the reporting need to understand how then could this be reported properly. In recent years, the impacts of climate change have become increasingly evident, posing significant challenges to the ecosystems, economies, and livelihoods worldwide. And Kenya, with its diverse ecosystems and vulnerable communities, is particularly susceptible to the adverse effects of climate change, and that is why the financing locally led climate action program was developed to really help to build the resilience of the vulnerable communities on this matter. As we navigate this era of environmental crisis, the role of the media in shaping public opinion, driving policy change, and raising awareness of climate-related issues cannot be overstated. And the media serves as a powerful tool for disseminating information, sparking conversations, and holding stakeholders accountable for their actions in the face of climate change. And climate change reporting plays a significant role in advocating for local action and solutions to combat climate change. In addition, well-trained journalists and editors will highlight success stories, innovative solutions, and policy recommendations in an easy-to-understand language to spur further action. And I think it is you guys who bring this communication to the local people, because you are the guys who know how this will be done to the local managing. And your role as your role on climate change as a fourth estate cannot be overstated. Meaningful reporting on the impacts of climate change can help our communities and businesses in Kenya better understand and prepare for the challenges they face, leading to enhanced resilience and adaptation at the local level. You can also influence public opinion and policy decisions on climate change matters. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya, like many other countries, has international commitments, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and mitigate the effects of climate change. The government needs your leadership and partnership to break down these targets into an easy-to-understand language, translate and further disseminate the national and international commitments to align with our national bottom-up transformation agenda. That is better. However, effective climate change reporting requires more than just the ability to convey information. It demands deep understanding of the scientific, social, and political dimensions of climate change, as well as the skills to communicate complex issues in a clear, accurate, and compelling manner. Editors, journalists, and media professionals in Kenya must be equipped with the knowledge and tools necessary to report on climate change effectively, ethically, and responsibly. Therefore, the need for training on climate change reporting in Kenya is clear and pressing. By investing in the capacity building of editors, journalists, and other media practitioners, we can enhance the quality and impact of climate change reporting, foster public engagement and action, and contribute to a more informed and empowered society in the face of this global challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, proper training ensures that journalists report on climate change is a fact-based and balanced manner. And this is very important to combat misinformation and disinformation and ensure that the public receive accurate and high quality information on climate change issues. I want to remind all of us as editors and reporters in this room today that you are the gatekeepers and you must be alive to the infiltration of fake news which can cause more harm to the local communities. Let me take this as the opportunity to thank our very committed partners in the environmental conservation and climate change, the German government through GIZ. I am especially delighted and note the support to develop a curriculum on reporting climate change. The plan to streamline the modules and anchor the curriculum in an institution of higher learning is welcome by the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, as it ensures the stability of site trainings. In order to boost the outcomes, the State Department of Environment and Climate Change will facilitate linkages with various like-minded institutions, including other ministries, to identify reporting gaps that need to be mainstreamed in the curriculum. On top of my mind will be the Kenya School of Government. I think that is the first place that you need to go, because already I know there are various conversations in that regard. I also want to congratulate the Guild for launching this initiative and for stepping up its mandate for impacting the next iteration of journalists. I understand that the trains will also target reporters in Kisumu and Mombasa, and this is highly commendable as it ensures the knowledge is imparted as properly as possible. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to reaffirm the commitment of the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry to promoting environmental literacy, advancing journalistic excellence, and catalyzing positive change in Kenya and beyond. I will at this point wish you a very fruitful deliberations. Looking forward to reading the synthesis of the outcomes of these trainings. And with those few remarks, I don't know what I'm supposed to do to declare this training officially open. I presume so. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ngeno. Let's clap for him again. And we appreciate your commitment and the ministry's commitment that you will support training. We appreciate and we'll be happy to partner with the ministry and other partners to train our journalists and our editors. I know, PS, you have a busy schedule, but I would like you to give us just 3 more minutes so that we can ask just a few questions in case any journalist, any editor, any participant would like to ask our good PS or the government any question. The floor is open. Thank you. Any? And the mic probably be going around. If there's no question, I'll think then the PS is doing very good job that everybody is understanding everything that the government is doing. But any question? The floor is open. Yes, here there is. We can start there, then we come here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, my name is Samuel Barapias. I do parliamentary reporting for the Daily Nation. Last year, Parliament passed the Climate Change Amendment Bill 2023. I want to understand, actually the President has already assented to it. To what extent are we in the implementation of this bill? How far we? What exactly has been done since the President assented to this bill?
Thank you. Let's take 2 more, then the PS will come here and respond to them. Is that okay? There's one here.
Morning, everyone. My name is Lynette Otieno, columnist on Climate Change Matters, and I'm a member of the Editors Guild. My point, I'm very glad about the idea of training people to understand this thing more, and I want to affirm that the climate change issue needs to be understood better by the people who are affected, the ones at the front line of the issue. How are we using the content creators that are now really robust in the digital platforms, the TikTok that is doing a lot of work, the Facebook, the Twitter and all that? I think it's an opportunity that needs to be grabbed, if not yet. So it's not really a question, but I think it's an area that needs focus as an avenue for really passing this information down. And that would mean really picking some very influential content creators and working with them to spread this information. Thank you.
Thank you. The last one.
Thank you very much. My name is Topista Namsoto. I am a council member with the Kenya Editors Guild. My question is on the response to the impact of climate change. What structures do we have in place in responding to climate change impacts?
Okay.
Yes, and the allocations, and how effective is this facility?
Thank you. Governor Pierce, the floor is yours. As you come, just to one, but please proceed as she asked the last one. We can interact with the PS during tea break before he leaves. Please proceed with the last question.
Thank you for this chance. My name is Lena Busibori. I write for Talk Africa. My question is, last year we had the tree planting holiday. So my question is, can we bank on carbon trading as a solution to the issues we are having on climate change?
Thank you so much for the questions. I thought I had escaped them. So nonetheless, we will respond. So on the first one, on the Amendment of Climate Change Act of 2016, now amended 2023, ascended to the President on 15th of September 2023, so it is in effect. The amendment was triggered by one thing. Of course, we were able to again take advantage of the amendment, was the issue of what the last speaker has mentioned about the carbon markets story or program. So we did amend the act to provide for carbon markets. So the process is that we have draft regulations which we have just finalized. It's a process. You know, we were used to the voluntary carbon markets story, and now we are trying to bring it into compliance market. So of course we needed to know as government what's happening in the carbon market space, and we wanted to make sure that it's transparent, there's integrity, and we know what's happening on these carbon trading processes, and therefore we had to amend the law because there was no law in Kenya that was talking about carbon markets. So as we speak, the CS is on the final stages of sending the regulations for drafting or for final conversations with the AG for purposes of Kasserine. And therefore that's where we are. So the act is in place, but the critical component that we were looking at was on carbon markets processes. So we have got the carbon markets now enshrined in the law. And of course, carbon trading comes onto that, and therefore I think Pacific at some point can be able to discuss. I think we had the carbon markets conference last week, and that's where we were talking, but our intention was to make sure that the amendment happened to take charge of that. And of course, again, the other aspect was this story of Climate Change Council. I know Pakia here, I know we have been on this story together. So we've never established a Climate Change Council since 2016, since the act was ascended to. So we wanted to make sure that we also sort out that matter. And I think those are the big two issues that we were looking at. So that is where we are now. So you will be seeing the regulations coming. Our plan is hopefully in the next 1 or 2 months we will have the regulations gazetted, then the processes. Whoever wants to trade in carbon can start the process of application under Article 6 compliance markets of content creation. I agree. So we could take the advantage of the platforms, digital, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and that. So I think you also are comment in that respect, and we appreciate that. Responses to the impacts of climate change, agreed. So we are well coordinated as government. If you saw last year during El Nino, that is usually anchored under the office of the Deputy President, and also the Ministry of Interior takes lead. So ours is to just provide information and support. So even as we look at all the coordination of disasters, whether it is the effect of climate change, drought, floods, and everything, there's a coordination because we have a National Disaster Response Center under the Ministry of Interior that is responsible for that process. So for us as a ministry is to just provide data, like for the Met, is to issue warnings on when the rains are coming, heavy rains, El Nino, or drought. So that's how it happens. And therefore, most of the communication comes from the Interior Ministry or the Office of the Deputy President. I agree, tree planting holiday, but as we speak, my CS is with the CS Education. They are doing a press release in terms of how we partner with the education sector. We want to push out the 15 billion tree growing program to make sure that we achieve the targets as given by His Excellency the President, that Presidential Directive. And therefore, that story of carbon trading, I think it will come at the end there. So it depends on how you so it's part of the program, but also let's plant the trees first. Can we get the 15 billion first? Can we get to 30% tree cover? Then we can discuss carbon trading, but there's opportunities within that space in that respect. And other opportunities in the energy sector, transport sector, clean cooking for carbon trading, not only forestry or tree growing is the only opportunity. We have so many opportunities in that respect. And I think Dr. Pacifica and the team will be able to highlight on our white list what are these opportunities that we can be able to trade on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, PS. We appreciate. Let's appreciate the PS again. I know there are many questions, but we will interact with officials from the ministry during tea break, and even because it's a continuous engagement. At this time, I would like us to take a break, but we'll start with a photo session. I will ask everyone to come in front. We do a group photo. We'll have some seats first arranged. First row, then we'll have others standing behind. Then after that, we'll take a break for tea. And after tea, we'll continue with the other part of today's session. I once again say thank you very much for the morning session, and karibuni sana for photo and karibuni sana for tea. Thank you. Kindly take your position. Kindly take your position. Kindly take position. Everyone, we are part of the photo. Please take position. Take position.
Tunapiga foto kwanza. So we stop this.
Bwana